Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Sorrow of Omega's Broken Heart. Episode 23. Book 3. I'll be your servant. Please, allow me to remain with you. You are creating your own demise. Delilah was an Omega with a distinctive aroma. Her stepmother exploited it and aimed to sell her to various men. After exhausting all efforts to protect herself from her step-parents' scheme, she ventured into the forest to seek a means of survival. However, a perilous creature had resided there for years. People were terrified just to contemplate him and never dared to enter the forest. It was as if it were his own dominion. What if she encountered the beast? Would he pursue her or permit her to survive? No. You can't do this with me. Delilah screamed at the woman who she called her mother. But in reality, she was just her stepmother who did not love her and wanted to sell her to other men so that she could earn some money. What did you say? Naomi got angry at her and slapped her face hard. Listen to me, girl. You can't decide what is right and wrong. You are 20 but I had to look after you for 10 years. You have to pay for it. Your father died without giving me anything. He was a poor man, I don't know why I even married that ugly guy in the first place. Delilah was 20 years old. She lost her mother when she was just 10. However, her father came home the next day with another woman and said she was her new mother. It was hard for her to accept but still, she tried her best. But this woman never loved her once. She made her do every household chore from that age. When Delilah was 15 her father died in a war because he was a pack fighter. So her stepmother married a man who had money. From then on, Delilah stayed with them because the house was her father's house. Naomi, her stepmother did not throw her out but made her their maid and lived her life as the landlord. Delilah touched her right cheek, she felt pain all over her cheek. She hissed and tears rolled down her eyes. She lowered her eyes to the floor. I have always done what you said to me. I didn't go out like other children. I didn't live my life how other girls live their lives. All of my life I had to stay with you as a maid. I was okay with that too. But now you want to sell me to men. I can't accept it. She mumbled. Naomi grabbed her arm and pushed her to the floor. Naomi, don't hurt her. If you break her bones, men will never like a defective woman. Harland, Naomi's husband said. Delilah felt disgusted that how could a man say that? Naomi and Harland both took over all the things that Delilah's father had. The house, his money, everything. In fact, Harland was living on her father's money. Delilah stood up slowly though her knees hurt. Be prepared. Those men are coming tomorrow. You have to submit to them. They will take you for one night. You will be back home the next morning. Just don't try to provoke them. Naomi warned her. Delilah shook her head. No, she whispered. What did you say? Say it again. I will cut your tongue. They are giving us a thick sum of money. If they like you, they will recommend others. Delilah felt like dying. How could a woman say those words to another woman? Was she a joke to her? All of her life she thought Naomi did not like her because she was her stepdaughter. But the way she wanted to do business with her body, it was ridiculous. I am not going to stay here anymore. Not gonna stay? Fine. Then I will throw you to the beast of the forest. He will eat you alive. Naomi growled. Hearing that, Delilah's eyes widened. The beast? Everyone knew about the beast. There was a saying that in the deep forest, a beast was staying there. He ate people alive. If someone met him, they could not come back alive. He was a very ugly and horrible-looking man. He liked to live alone. If anyone disturbed or crossed his side, their death was inevitable. Delilah felt shiver all over her body hearing about the beast. If you want to stay alive, then just do as we say. Naomi smirked. She knew Delilah would never leave this house ever. She was confident about it. Delilah nodded at her and ran to her room. She needed to escape from there. She could not let others destroy her purity and use her. She could not let her life be ruined by other men and her step-parents. Everyone in the pack knew about her and called her an abandoned Omega. Many of them laughed at her for her situation. They called her weak and vulnerable. Naomi provoked others by telling them fake things about her. Delilah did not know how she would survive outside. When it was midnight, her step-parents were sleeping in their room. With slow steps and a fast-beating heart, she came out of her room and closed the door unhurriedly so that it could not cause any noise. She glanced around and took a deep breath. She strode to the door and came out of the house. She looked at the house for the last time. It was not true that she did not want to leave all these years. It was just, she had memories with her mother in this house, and she did not want to leave her mother's memories. But this time she had to leave for her sake. She closed the door and turned around. She strolled ahead. It was a cold and dark night. She wandered around alone. She never came out of her home at this time before. Today she fled from hell. But where would she go? She had no one. Not a paternal or maternal family. Everyone lived in other villages. She could not go there. Then where could she go and take shelter? The road was unclear because of the darkness. She saw a hurricane lamp hanging in a tree beside the road. Someone might think it would show little light to the passerby on this night. She headed to the tree and took down the hurricane. The flame inside it showed her light for walking forward. She thought for some time and felt she was alone in this whole pack. It was better to live in the forest than sell herself there. So she started to walk inside the forest. The more she walked, the more heard the crunching sound of the dried leaves when she stepped on them. The sky was clouded with darkness and the air was chilly. She felt frozen. She did not know where she got the courage to come to the forest. Her stepmother's words came to her ears. "The beast will eat you alive." Naomi's voice kept enchanting in her ears. She felt fear inside her heart. Her legs were wobbling. She could see the yellow dried leaves through the light of the hurricane. She walked for a long time and felt her body freezing. She felt unsteady. She didn't eat anything the whole day. A sound of crunching came towards her ears and stopped. Her heartbeat started to run fast in fear. Who? It was not her steps anymore but coming from beforehand. Her legs felt jelly on the ground but she still tried to walk to see who was there. "Who's there?" she asked again. Unexpectedly a dark silhouette came across her sight. Her steps halted. She tried to put up the hurricane lamp close to her eyes to see who was coming. The moment she put it up, the candle flames inside it blew away and the huge figure towering over her. She slowly looked up and saw a pair of furious orange eyes looking into her eyes. Beast! A handsome stranger beast! Delilah stuttered as she could not take her eyes off his eyes. Her whole body was shaking in fear. She heard a loud growl which made her fall to her knees to submit to him. The growl was so powerful that she lost consciousness and fainted. The next morning, Delilah felt a light in her eyes. When she opened her eyes she immediately closed them. The sunlight directly fell on her face. It bothered her to keep her eyes open. She gradually sat up and opened her eyes slowly. She roamed her eyes around and gasped. She was in the dark forest. The trees around here were very big and dark green. The sunlight kept touching her face from the corner of the leaves of those trees. She remembered what happened last night. Her eyes widened. She shook her head and stood up but whizzed when she felt pain in her knees. Yesterday her stepmother pushed her. That time she got hurt on her knees, and then last night when the beast growled she kneeled on the ground with a thud and got hurt a second time. Beast. She thought about him. The way his orange eyes looked at her, it looked like he was really offended by her. No, no. I cannot stay here, she told herself. She looked for a way and tried to get out of there. She started to walk but something caught her eye. It was the hurricane lamp she came with. It was broken. Was that broken by falling down or because of the sound of the beast's growl? It was her foolishness to come here. She was a fool. Otherwise, why would she come here? She could have died by the beast. She still remembered, there was a woman living beside her home when she was 14. That woman lost her son. She told everyone about how her son went to the forest and was hunted by the beast. He did not come back again. That time everyone in the pack shook in fear. He will kill me. He will kill me. He will kill me. She kept chanting the same words as she headed away. She frowned when she could not memorize the path. I forgot the way. She screamed. How can I forget the way? No, no. I can't forget that. How can I go back? Where will I go? What if the beast tries to hunt me again? This time he will kill me for sure. She scolded herself for coming here. She should have thought about it first before stepping into the forest. The chilliness of the air made her quiver. Being an Omega was very tough in their pack, after all her rank was the lowest rank among others. Omegas were born to be slaves. Some of the Alphas bought them for their pleasure. Some of the buyers came to buy but found themselves as their mates. So they accepted them. But it was not going to happen with Delilah. Her stepmother wanted to sell her to men. She would let them play with Delilah's body as much as they wanted. Delilah's no was nothing to her and her second husband. Delilah tightened her fists. No, I cannot go back there. She will complain to the Alpha and find me soon. Alpha will scold her and tell her to take care of me as her child. What about after that? She will sell me in the dark night without the knowledge of others. Delilah knew how that woman was. She tried to tell the Alpha about her mother beating her for asking about the money her father saved for her. After that Alpha only scolded Naomi and told her that she should take care of her since she did not have a child and it was her husband's daughter. He even told her that it was Delilah's right to take the money for her living. But Naomi only nodded her head to him and did not do anything as she was told. After coming back home, she beat her more and warned her not to tell others again. The pack never gave any respect to Delilah because of her rank. At the same time men attempted to use her because she did not have a parent to protect her. Most of the time it was because of her scent too. So why would she go back? She could not. Her relatives did not have a great bond with her either since her father and mother both were dead. She looked around and went to a path her heart told her to go. She heard a few muffled voices from afar. She thought they would help her, so she headed to those voices. She almost reached them. There were a few young men who looked like woodcutters. They had axes in their hands. Delilah's eyes lightened up. She understood that the way was right. She was close to the outside. She did not know where she would go, but right now she did not want to get killed by the beast. When she was passing the way, one of those men noticed her. Hey! Who are you? Delilah stopped. She looked at them and replied, I am sorry to disturb you, please keep doing your work. She was about to step forward when she heard them. Grab the girl. She is an Omega. Her heart pounded. No, no. Not again, the same problem. She saw them coming to her. Delilah looked at the way where she wanted to go and turned around the opposite. Looked like she could not go back anymore. She started to run. She looked behind. They were following her. She tried to run fast. She did not know where she was going. After a long run, she did not realize they lost her in the dark forest. She kept running and felt her strength was losing. Suddenly she saw a man doing something in her way. His back was facing her. His broad shoulders and muscular arms were telling that he was a warrior. She could not stop her steps and bumped into him. He turned around and she was stunned. She was about to fall back, but he grabbed her waist to support her. She looked at him carefully. He was a handsome man with a few scratches on his face. His front hair bangs covered his forehead gracefully, almost hiding his beautiful eyes. If people looked from afar they would say he looked dangerous, but closely he was really handsome. She was lost in his facial features. But his deep voice made her come back to her senses. Who are you? Two ways, who are you? Delilah kept staring at the man as if she was lost on him. Who are you? Delilah. He loosened his grip and she fell to the ground. Ah! Why did you do that? It was the third time her knees got hurt. She might become crippled soon. Just go back from where you came from. His voice was cold and shook her from the inside. He turned around and started to walk ahead. She looked at his back. His mullet didn't reach his shoulder line. A handsome but scary man. She stared for some time until he disappeared from her sight. What a strange man! She mumbled. Before she could ask for help, he turned his back to her. She tried to stand up. She took the support of a tree and stood up slowly. I am feeling hungry. She cried. She was starving. She looked back to the way from where she escaped from the woodcutters. I should have told the man about this incident. But he is just rude. But wait. Something caught her mind. He was someone who did not get affected by her Omega scent. Thinking about that, her eyes brightened up. All the time she had to run away from other men because everyone chased after her scent, it increased their lust and they wanted to take her. However, that man was young, but he looked normal, as if nothing could affect him, not even her scent. She did not think more and started to walk fast in the way he just went. Her legs started to hurt, but she could not stop. Life was really unfair to her. She was just a normal girl. Why did her fate have to be so cruel to her? What if her mother was alive? She could have lived like a normal happy girl. What if her father was alive? At least he would not let her stepmother think about selling her to other men. The fresh air and the smell of the ground, the smell of the forest made her relaxed. She wanted to sit somewhere to feel the environment. However, the fear of getting caught by men made her legs walk ahead. Her steps halted when she saw an old man coughing. He was sitting under a tree. When he saw her, his brows furrowed. He waved at her with his shaking hand. My child, come here. Delilah conflicted with herself about whether she should go or not. She had no other option, and the old man, who was really old, looked modest to her, so she stepped toward him. Yes. My child, what are you doing here in this dangerous forest? Had asked but coughed again. Do you want to drink some water? The old man shook his head. I am old, it's just my time to go. Water cannot stop it. Don't say that. You will be fine. Delilah replied. She was a well-mannered girl. She always felt sad for old and poor people. She could feel their pain. Answer me, child. Grandpa. She told him about her situation in her family. She did not forget to tell about the woodcutters who wanted to follow her inside the forest. You are really helpless now. Where will you go? The old man asked her. I don't know. But what are you doing here? Haven't you heard about the beast? She mumbled. The old man chuckled. What will he do to this old man? I am aged and useless now. Delilah lowered her head. She heard him. But you have a way. Delilah looked at him. A way? He nodded. I have been here for years. I have seen so many people come here with courage but they have never returned because of their foolishness. But you are not like them. Your scent is extraordinary. You are special, my child. Special. The old man nodded and coughed. He pointed his hand to the left side. Walk straight to this path. Don't forget the direction. You have to walk until you see an invisible boundary. Invisible boundary. Delilah was confused. Yes, you can recognize that when you will reach there. When you cross the boundary, don't be scared of anything. Just walk ahead there until someone comes to stop you. Someone? Who? The one who can save you from the outside world. Delilah wondered whether she could believe in him or not. Grandpa, what are you doing here? My child, I live in the closest village. But this forest is my home. I can understand your confusion but you have no way to go back. Delilah sighed and nodded at him. She asked the moon goddess to save her and started to walk on the left side. Moon goddess, I hope you will save me. I can't stay in my pack. I have nowhere to go back. Why did you make me an omega with a strange scent? Now you have to help me. I don't want to die at the same time I don't want to be a plaything of men. She prayed and kept strolling in the direction where the old man told her to go. After a long time of walking, she felt tired. She was hungry and thirsty. Any moment she could collapse on the ground. It was late afternoon and the darkness slowly grabbed the sky. She came to a way where there were no trees but looked like a border in the middle of the forest, as if the forest was divided by two parts. Her eyes widened. She thought, so it was the boundary he was talking about. She did not waste time and stepped on the other side of the forest, leaving the way from where she came. Meanwhile, under the tree, the old man's black eyes turned green. The wrinkles on his face were removed and his face changed into a young man. He stood up and looked at the way where he told Delilah to go. Sometimes you don't even know where your fate is taking you. Maybe it will prosper your life or it will be your death. Your death. Delilah started to walk and an unknown fear was eating her alive. She forgot to tell that old man about her seeing the beast. She was afraid of him. Who knew when he would come after her again just like last night? I am still confused about how he did not harm me. I clearly saw his bloodthirsty orange eyes. Is he blind at night? I hope so. She thought and focused on her way. Suddenly she heard a loud growl. Ah! She screamed but put her hands over her mouth. The growl echoed through the whole forest. She shook her head in fear. She ran as fast as she could. Tears streamed out of her eyes. He will eat you alive. Naomi's words kept chanting in her mind. She saw a little light in the dark forest. It was like a hope for her. But it was far away from her. She made her way to it, avoiding the loud growls. The growls stopped when she closed the light. She thought the beast was following her and would kill her. Unexpectedly her right hand was caught by someone and she screamed, "No, no! I don't want to die. She cried and struggled. What are you doing here? She heard a familiar voice. She looked up and saw the familiar face. It was the man who she met in the morning. Delilah's eyes widened and she hugged him in fear. Please, please, save me. The beast is after me. He will kill me. She felt warmth in his chest. But it was not time for thinking that. They were in a life and death situation. Any time they would get killed. The man grabbed her arms and pushed her. She controlled her steps and looked at him. She could see that he was somehow angry. Is he angry because I hugged him? Why did I do that? I should not have done that. But I am very scared. Didn't I tell you to go back? I don't have anywhere to go. She mumbled and lowered her head. Tears kept rolling from her eyes. She did not want to show him that. She immediately wiped her tears. The man was silent, so she glanced at him. He was glaring at her. How can he be so cruel? Who sent you here? He asked with an aggressive tone. No one. He stepped closer and she stepped back. Really? She nodded her head and was frightened to look into his eyes. He was furious. He grabbed her jaw. How did you get this way and come here? Delilah stared at him. The old grandpa. He furrowed his brows. Delilah watched his expression carefully. She did not want to make this familiar stranger angry. Old man. Yes, he told me to come here. He nodded at her and stepped backward. If you want to die, then it's your wish. He said and strolled ahead. She saw he was also going toward the lights. She followed him behind. She did not want to be alone where the beast was coming to hunt her alive. He stopped. Don't follow me. He muttered and made his way where he wanted to go. Delilah kept crying and stared at his back. What can I do now? Where will I go? There is no one who can help me. I will get killed tonight by the beast. She looked down at her legs. Her shoes had gone. She walked so fast all day long that her shoes were torn and gone. Her legs were bleeding because of the thorn in the ground. Her dress was long but very thin. Dirt was here and there in her dress. He felt homeless. Should I think about death? She felt shivering. She did not know why. Was it because of the chilling air or the fear of being killed by the dangerous creature? Her throat felt numb and her head was hurting. She was feeling dizzy again. Mom, I don't want to die because you told me to live long. I promised you to live long. She murmured. She tried to take a deep breath in the cold dark night, but the air was so cold that she felt frozen. Her eyes slowly closed and she fell to the ground. She lost her consciousness. When she woke up, she felt something warm wrapping around her. She felt the heat and pulled it more to her body. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling. It was made of wood. A few yellow lights were set up on the ceiling. She yawned and turned her head to the other side. Her eyes widened. She sat up immediately. She was laying on the couch all this time. In front of her was a single couch and a man was glaring at her with his dark black eyes. You? She stuttered. How can an Omega come here? Who gave you the courage to come inside the forest? Where are you from? He asked her a bunch of questions. She looked at the small scars on his face. With the light, she could see him properly. He looked really powerful with his aura and his broad shoulder. She had never seen a man like him before. They met thrice today. Was he the one that the old man told her about? Why are you not answering me? I was in the forest. Did you take me here? She asked and looked around. It was a two-story wooden house. It was small but enough for living. There was no decoration but only pure furnished wood everywhere. The furniture was exceptional, it had an open kitchen too. She could see the forest from inside. She remembered the lights in the forest. So those lights were coming from this house. Her eyes fell on the man again. He looked mad as if he would kill her if she did not answer all his questions. Delilah was bewildered about him living in the middle of the forest without any fear. "Who are you?" He did not take the time to reply. "Your death. Let me stay your death." "What?" He stood up and her heart skipped a beat. She thought he would hurt her. But she was wrong. He went to the kitchen and put some fruits on a plate. He came back and placed the plate on the tea table in front of her. She looked at the plate of fruits and then at him. "Don't act innocent. Just eat and leave." Then she realized she was hungry. She had not eaten for 2 whole days. She glanced at the fruits but she could not stop herself from devouring the fruits. She grabbed the apple and started to eat hungrily as if she had never eaten any fruit before. He looked at her and sighed. He walked out of the house. When she saw him leaving the house she paused but again started to eat. She did not have any time to think about whether he gave her a poisonous apple as he told her he was her death. She was starving like death. After eating a few apples and grapes, she felt a little better. The floor was made of wood, the stairs, the ceiling, everything. How can the wooden house be here? Who lives here? He? Alone? Where are the others who live here? He must be a fearless man. She thought. She tried to stand up but fell to the couch. Her head was still spinning. She touched her forehead. Was she having a fever? She wanted to wrap the blanket which was covered her body from the cold a few minutes ago. The moment she tried to wrap it around, a hand grabbed her hand and made her stand up. "You are done eating. Now get out of my house." When did he come into the house? She didn't hear anything. Was it because of her high fever? Delilah blinked at him. Her eyes were red because of her fever. "I don't know where to go. Do you think I care?" He pulled her with him and took her out of the wooden house. Her steps were wobbling. She could fall anytime. Her legs were hurting a lot. "Please let me stay here." He stopped outside and glared at her. "What did you just say?" Delilah nodded at him. "Please? Thank you for taking me here when I was unconscious. But now where will I go? You saw me in the forest alone, didn't you? I have nowhere to go." His eyes were dark. His bangs were parted showing his clean forehead. Fear was rising in her heart each second. Her whole body was shaken. The cold air of the forest touched her body over her thin cloth. Her hair was messy. A chilly wind touched her legs and she hissed. It felt like a thorn. The wind was like a thorn in the scratches in her legs. He looked at the painful expression on her face and scrutinized her from head to toe. Delilah rubbed her leg over another. She felt ashamed when he looked at her. She thought he was disgusted by her dirty appearance. She was full of dirt. For the first time, she felt self-conscious. His gaze was like tracing over her body without touching it. He let go of her hand. "Turn straight and walk onwards. Don't look back or come back here again. This place is not safe." Delilah looked at him. "Aren't you living here?" He frowned. "Do you think I am safe for you?" She felt upset when he said that. She knew for a woman, no man was safe for her except her lover or husband. But she felt safe here, at least he was not selling her to others. He left her but when she was unconscious he saved her from the beast and took her here, in his place. He gave her shelter and let her eat to stay alive. If he was not safe, then who would be safe for her? She thought she was thinking that because she had never met and talked with another man like that. Her step-parents always tried to cage her in their house. Most of the time she went out when they went on a vacation, leaving her alone. She never got a chance to make friends because of her position in her family. Where would she go? Wherever she went, men ran after her for her scent. She was an unmated omega with a unique scent. If I go anywhere, the beast will hunt me, she said with a shaken tone. Beast? Yes. He saw me last night. Whoever met him, never came back alive. She saw him staring at her. Aren't you afraid of him? How can you live here alone? He did not reply to her. She scolded herself to make him angry again. I won't ask you anything again, I am sorry. Can you please let me stay here? You have a house here. I can work for you. Work for me? How? He asked her. Hearing his reply, she felt relieved. He at least talked to her. An idea popped into her head. I can be your maid, she said with a fragile smile. Her head was burning like fire. This fever? He shook his head. I don't need any housekeeper. I don't care about any beast. Just get out of my way, he declared and entered his house. Before she could say anything, he shut the door in her face. She stared at the door for some time. She slid down against the wall beside the door. Pulling her knees against her chest, she rested her head on her knees. In the dark night, the second floor's light was giving a little glow. But after a few minutes, the lights went off. She bit her lips as she looked at the trees. Her fever was rising higher. She was feeling like dying. She started to cry without letting out any sound. She was sobbing. In this unknown world, where would she go? Suddenly the house's door opened. Do you want to die? Why are you still here? I don't like people around me. I am going to kill you, he growled. It was very loud, or she was an illusion. She closed her eyes. It was dim everywhere and she could not see him anyway. Can I ask for a last wish? She felt him coming towards her as if he would kill her, but he stopped when she spoke out. I'll be your slave. Please, let me stay with you. You are digging your own grave. Where is your mate? You are digging your own grave. That voice was something she did not expect. That was very in-depth. Something that could kill her alive. She was losing her mind thinking about what was happening around her. The weakness was eating her slowly. Her frozen body needed warmth. She wanted to open her eyes but was not able to do it. Lifting her hand, she wanted his support. Then she felt the warmth she wanted. A tear rolled down from her closing eyes. She sobbed. Will you give me shelter? She asked as she tried to stand up while taking support of his hand. It was like she knew him for a while, as if he was her nearest person to offer her protection from her family who wanted to sell her as a prostitute, from those men who wanted to destroy her. For a moment, she felt like staying with him as he wanted to be with her. Questioning this sudden thought, she considered it was all because of her dizziness. Or was it really her fate? She could not stand up but was about to fall. He scoffed, I have never seen a foolish girl like you before. You came to the mouth of death and asked for shelter to let you stay alive. She did not retort to him back. A pair of warm arms wrapped around her legs and her waist. He lifted her UPA and went inside his house. The heat from his body embraced her thoroughly. This type of warmness she had never felt before. Was it called a woman's safe place? Different thoughts came to her dizzy mind. She put her head on his chest. She heard him. His voice was getting lower and almost unbearable. What is wrong with this girl? Every time she saw me, always fainted. Delilah could hear the sound of birds, their chirping was something like angelic. As if those birds were very close to her. The smell of forest and rain clutched her nose. A smile scrambled on her soft lips. She did not want to wake up. It was like she was in a dream. She had never slept so peacefully before. She opened her eyes. She stared at a wooden ceiling for a while. Then she sat up and glanced around. She was in a room. The room was big enough for 2 or 3 people. There was a cabinet and a tool besides a wall. She looked down at the bed where she was sitting. It was a soft and cozy bed. She was wrapped in a blanket. She immediately looked under it to see if she was in her full clothes. When she saw she was in her clothes, she let out a sigh of reassurance. What am I doing here? She glanced at the large window beside the bed. The forest was visible through it. She could see the dark green trees. The leaves of the trees were moving in the wind. Such beautiful scenery of nature amazed her eyes. Every memory before she lost her consciousness came across her mind. She remembered how she told the man that she would be his slave so that she could convince him to let her stay here. She gasped. She put her hands over her mouth. What have I done? She thought. She cursed herself. How could I say that for living in a house? Mother wanted to sell me and I did not want to let them use my body, and here I am. How could I say that to him? What will I do now? She was so sick at that time, she almost died of a cold. So she did not know what she was saying. Now that she was conscious, she regretted it. However, she did not forget the warmth when he lifted her. She slowly got down from the bed. She made her way to the door and headed to the stairs nervously. When she reached downstairs, she saw that man sitting on the floor doing something. When she went close, she saw him sharpening a wooden stake with a sharp knife. Delilah clutched her dress when she saw the wooden stake. Will he kill me with it? Why is he making a killer weapon? Isn't it made to kill werewolves? She shook in fear. She looked at him carefully. He looked dangerous for sure. But his handsome face was something that made her think that he was not that harmful until he looked at her. His eyes were full of clouds. Her heart almost stopped looking into his eyes. He averted his gaze. His hands never stopped working, as if he used to do that for years. Delilah cleared her throat. Well, good morning. She lost her words and greeted him in the morning. She slapped his head in her mind. She was behaving like a fool. He did not reply to her, as if she did not exist. I just woke up. She started to speak again. 3 days. He spoke out. She was confused. 3 days what? He replied, you woke up after 3 days. She was stunned. She was sleeping for 3 days? Was her fever that high? I am so sorry for this inconvenience. I never had that high fever before. By the way, I am Delilah. She explained and tried to converse with him. He did not care to respond. He put down the wooden stake he was working on and took another one. Delilah realized there were 3 more stakes like that spreading on the floor beside him. What would he do with those stakes? There was no sound in the house, but only the sound of scratching the wood was audible. What is your name? She asked. She did not know what more she could ask him right now. He was doing his work without answering back. She thought he did not like to tell her his name. But he let out with his cold voice, Everett. Delilah did not know why, but she felt her heart beating faster. She stared at the unknown man who she didn't even know, but thinking to stay with him in a small wooden house and did not know for how much time she would stay there. She pronounced his name in her mind. Everett. Suddenly a question arose in her heart. She could not help but ask him. "Where is your mate?" He looked young, but Delilah could understand that he was older than her. "He looks like in his mid-20s. He must have his mate. Is she living here with him? Was that why he was angry when I told him to let me stay here? But I can't see any of her traces here. Where is she?" she thought. His hands paused hearing her question. A shiver ran down her spine when she heard his angry voice. "I killed her. His clothes, I killed her." Delilah stared at him. Her hands and legs were shaking. "What are you saying?" He shrugged his shoulders and continued to sharpen the stake. She stepped back. She could not believe that someone could kill their own mate. Her real parents were mates. But her father might be in an extramarital affair with Naomi. So the next day after her mother's death, her father married Naomi as his chosen mate. Though he did not like her mother, still he had to be with his mate when she was alive because no one could resist their mate bond. Mates were the part and parcel of a werewolf. She assumed he was a warrior wolf, and the way he was working on the killer weapons, she was totally confirmed about it now. But how cruel of a man could he be? He killed his own mate, his fated mate. "What? Have you changed your decision about staying here?" he asked. She bit her lower lip as she began to think about the consequences of living there. "If I live here, he will kill me. If I go out of here, the beast will kill me. If I go back to my pack, my stepmother will find out about me and she will try to sell me. Where will I go now?" She was lost in her thoughts again. "I am in a trap," she mumbled. His brows furrowed. He looked at her. "Did you mean I trapped you here?" She shook her head. "No, no. I didn't mean that. I was just talking about my fate and my situation. I am trapped by my fate. I have nowhere to go." He collected all the stakes from the floor and stood up. He headed to the door. She thought he would go out, so she tried to call him. Evera, she got interrupted by a wooden stake flying at her directly. Her eyes widened. She could not get time to move because she was totally shocked. The wooden stake slid beside her cheek and stuck in the wall behind her. She was startled. Not a single sound came out of her mouth. She moved her eyes to him. He twisted the door lock and said, "Don't call my name again. This was just a little warning. Since you are my slave, call me master from now on." He went out of the house while closing the door. She stood there like a mannequin. What was that? She almost got a heart attack. She slowly moved her body and turned to the wall. The wooden stake was still stuck inside the wall. He almost killed her now. "Ay." She groaned and pulled her hair. "How can I live here with him? He is too dangerous." She sighed and sat on the couch for some time. Then she walked upstairs to take a shower and freshen up. Her fever was gone, but she was still weak. Her strength did not come back properly. It would take some time. She did not have any clothes except the dirty cloth that she just put off before the shower. So she wrapped the towel around her and came out of the bathroom to see if there was a cloth in the cabinet. Since he had a maid before, some clothes might have been there. She opened the cabinet. The sight of clothes stunned her. There were the same types of shirts but in different colors. Most of them were brown and black. Moreover, all of them were Everett's clothes. She took out a brown one. She remembered he wore the same color, so she put it back and took out the black one. She tried to find a bottom. She found his jeans and sweatpants. The clothes quality is quite good. How can he afford these types of clothes? She thought. So many clothes were arranged there. Some of them looked royal. The cloth he is wearing right now is poor quality. Why is he even wearing that when he had a bunch of expensive clothes here? She was confused. Nonetheless, she took one of his clothes and went back to the bathroom to wear them. When she wore his clothes, she nearly drowned in them. He was much bigger and more muscular than her. Of course, his clothes size would be bigger than her body. She went downstairs and moved to the kitchen. She was hungry, so she tried to find something to cook. What made her shocked was there was nothing in the kitchen to cook. No vegetables, meats, nothing. How could she survive without eating? She came out of the kitchen to find any fruits on the table, but the table was empty as well. She was frustrated. Living in the middle of the forest was really tough. How could she blame the man? No, she could not. The door opened and Everett entered. Evera, he glared at her. Master, there is nothing in the kitchen to cook. What do you eat? Raw meat. He replied simply. What? Raw meat? What are you saying? You are lying, aren't you? She asked nervously. He did not reply to her. He went to the kitchen and put the bag which was in his hand. Delilah didn't notice it until now. I bought some vegetables and meat. You can cook and eat. Don't need to cook for me. He said and turned around to leave, but stopped in the middle as if he forgot something. He turned around and made her way to her. Seeing that he was coming closer to her, she stepped back. He stood in front of her. His eyes trailed over her head to toe and Delilah's cheek turned red. She saw him tightening his jaw. She felt scared when the vein of his hands became visible on his hands. What happened? She asked nervously. He was fuming. He grabbed her arms and pulled her to him. She was frightened by his sudden anger. How dare you touch my things without my permission? Waiting for him. How dare you touch my things without my permission? Everett got mad at her. Her whole body was shaking as she heard him. I didn't have anything. Can't you even speak clearly? Delilah took a deep breath, but it was not easy to take a breath when he caged her by grabbing her arms. Master, don't get mad at me. I didn't have any clothes to wear. He glared at her. Next time, don't touch anything without my permission. Otherwise, you have to bear the consequences. He pushed her. She almost fell to the ground but controlled her steps. She lowered her head as she was really embarrassed about everything. Don't touch anything, don't talk to me without any reason, don't disturb me, and most importantly, stay away from me. He threw a bunch of rules at her. She nodded her head while looking down. Words. Yes, master. He left the house again, leaving her alone in the house. She unhurriedly walked to the kitchen. She was upset by his behavior. She didn't mean to steal anything. She was helpless. She wanted to slap herself. How could she become so shameless? Half of her whole life went by doing chores at home as a maid. There was no whiff of happiness in her life. Her eyes fell on the bag. She opened it and saw fresh vegetables, meat, and flour. As if he went to buy it or a salesman delivered it to him while thinking of a meal course. Where did he buy these? She thought. He might know the way out of the forest since he lived here. There was a village out of the forest. Delilah thought about what to cook. She started to boil the vegetables and slice the meat. She thought of making dumplings and vegetable soup. When it was noon, she arranged the dishes and cutlery on the table and waited for Everett to come and had lunch. She was hungry because she did not have breakfast and now she was waiting for Everett. It was his home. Though he said not to cook for him, it was not a righteous thing to eat alone in his home without cooking for him. Everett did not come back. So Delilah could not wait any longer and had her lunch. When it was afternoon, she went out of the house to look around. The wind was blowing and she smiled looking at the trees. She walked to a tree in front of her and turned around. She looked at the wooden house. It was really beautiful. She could not get a chance to look at it from the outside before. When Everett threw her out, that was night time. So she could not see it in the dark night. How did he make it? Where did he get workers to build it? Who helped him in this forest? She thought. He was a mysterious man. No matter how much she thought, she got no answer. Is he a magician? She shook her head. What am I thinking? Delilah thought about her family. They were not even her family. What was her stepmother doing now? Complaining about her to the head alpha? What others were doing? Were they starting to search for her? She sneered. They will never get me. Because I am in the forest right now. They will never dare to enter the forest because of the BEA. Her thoughts stopped when the sound of crunching grabbed her attention. She turned around and saw no one. But the crunching sound was coming from the other side. She immediately ran to the house and closed the door. She locked it. She could see the forest from both sides of the main door. They were ceiling to ground glass windows. She ran to the bedroom and closed its door too. She was afraid. She was afraid to get in the hand of the beast. She remembered how those orange eyes were looking at her angrily. As if he was furious that she entered inside the forest. It was her good luck that he did not kill her. Maybe he thought I was dead. That's why he left me without killing me. But now he finds out I am here. What if he catches me? What if he kills Everett? She thought and cried. No, I can't let him do that. The man just let me stay here. I can't take a risk with his life. I can't be the reason for his death. He was living peacefully until I came here. What will happen now? The feelings of fear raised in her heart. Her heartbeat was beating faster. She sat on the bed while thinking about this. She did not know when she fell asleep. When she woke up, it was dark outside. She went downstairs and saw Everett had not come back yet. She cooked another course meal for dinner and arranged them on the table. Did he come back and knock on the door? But I was sleeping, so he went back. She thought as she looked at the locked door. She saw the lock twisted. She hurriedly stood up and ran to the door. She saw that Everett was standing out the door through the window. She opened the door and examined him. He was totally okay, which made her relieved. He looked at her. What? She shook her head and stepped aside to let him enter the house. He went upstairs and came down after freshening up. He was looking more handsome. Water was dripping out of his hair strands as he wiped his hair. He was wearing a sleeveless shirt showing his muscles. She was lost in this good-looking man. His cheeks had a few scratches as if it was confirmation that he went to war. He moved to the couch but she stopped him. Master, he turned to her and raised an eyebrow. I made dinner, can we eat together? Same bed, I made dinner, can we eat together? There was a frown between his brows, departing two brows by a thin line. Did I tell you to cook for me? No, master. But can we eat together? Eating alone is really boring. He wanted to scold her, but when he saw she was running towards the table and pulled out a chair for him, he did not yell at her. He walked to the table and sat down. She immediately took a plate and served him dumplings. Please eat vegetable soup too, she recommended as she pushed the bowl to have a plate. He stared at his plate for some time. Delilah sat down on a chair beside him slowly. She was afraid that he would not like her cooking. However, her stepmother always told her that she cooked well, otherwise she would not let her stay in the house. She tasted the soup to see if everything was okay or not. Everything is okay. Then why is he not eating anything? She asked herself. With curiosity, she asked him, "Don't you like these dishes?" "I am sorry, I don't know what you like or dislike." He looked at her. "Just eat quietly." She looked away and nodded. She hurriedly started to eat without looking at him. What if he started to behave like he did at noon? She glanced at him. He was eating. She felt relieved. He gave her permission to stay here and did not try to harm her. He even bought cooking ingredients for her without asking for money. So she should do something for him. "I think I can do cooking and cleaning. So don't worry about this. I will work for it," she let out confidently. He paused eating. "Who told you I am worrying about cleaning my house?" "Well, no one. But I have nothing to do here. So I thought." "You thought?" he interrupted. She looked down at her plate. She shook her head. Nothing. She did not know what to do. She told him to let her stay with him, but how many days would she stay there? Everett stood up with his plate. She stood up too. "Give me your plate." "No need." He went to the kitchen and cleaned his dishes. She looked at the man's back. He looked very strong. His muscles were moving as he was washing the dish. His eyes focused on his plate and water. He looked like a portrait to her. He came out of the kitchen and went upstairs. After cleaning the table and her dishes, she headed upstairs. She looked down at her clothes. It felt comfy, but it was his clothes. He scolded her today for that. But did not have anything to wear except his clothes. Thank God he forgot about his clothes, she thought. When she entered the room, she saw him lying on the bed while looking at the ceiling. Her legs stopped. He was in the bed. Where would she sleep now? When he saw her, he closed his eyes as if he did not want to get disturbed by her. Delilah cleared her throat. "Where will I sleep?" Everett opened his eyes. "Why? Can't you see the bed? But you are sleeping there. Do you mean I should leave my bed for you?" "No. You sleep here. I will go downstairs." She paused. "What?" He looked at her. She was hesitant to say anything. But what happened today came across her mind. She was outside and she heard something as if someone was following her. "I don't want to sleep downstairs," she requested with a shaken voice. He stared at her. She felt that he wanted to know why she did not want to sleep there. "I went out of the house for some time today. Just outside. But I felt someone was following me." He narrowed his eyes. "Who?" "The beast." He sighed. "Stop talking nonsense. Please believe me. I heard the crunching sound, but when I turned to that side, I saw no one was there. I think he is following me." Everett looked angry. "I have no time for your nonsense talk. I think he wants to kill me. I saw him looking at me angrily," she muttered. She was trying to convince him to not let her stay there. She felt she was asking too much of him, as if he was her closest person and she could ask anything of him. "I am sorry, I am too afraid of him." She spoke again. He glared at her. "Stop talking about the beast. The moment you came here, you only talked about him. Are you in love with him or something? If yes, then go and find him, don't disturb me at night. I am sorry. Please don't be angry with me. She wanted to slap herself for making him angry. Come here. He ordered her. She was stunned by his sudden order. She made her way to him with slow steps. His eyes were scanning her every reaction. Her legs were shaking when she saw him looking at her. She stood in front of him beside the bed. He did not sit up, only looked at her. Yes. Get on the bed. What? I said, get on the bed. She bit her lips nervously. She did not know what he wanted. But she was not prepared for anything right now. She did not know what he would do to her. He was dangerous enough to do anything to her with the sharp stakes. She went to the opposite side and sat on the bed. He pulled her by her waist and she fell on him. Her eyes widened. Her heart started to beat fast. His hand was roaming around her waist. She pushed him slightly but his grip tightened. She struggled under his arms but failed. Leave me. He replied with a fierce tone, why? Aren't you the slave who agreed to warm my bed? His friends why? Aren't you the slave who agreed to warm my bed? Delilah was stunned hearing his words. She indeed said to him about the slave thing, but at that time she had no other option. He was not letting her enter, so she tried to convince him somehow. I didn't mean that. Everett's dark gaze made her shake from the core. Never make a commitment if you don't mean that. He said and let her go. She immediately moved away from him and sat on the other side. She felt tears in her eyes. She wiped them and was about to get out of bed, but his voice stopped her. Sleep here, in this bed. He turned around and his back was facing her. She lay on the bed and covered herself with the quilt which was arranged on the leg side. She did not know why she said that to him. Now he would treat her like a slave with her. Slave. She did not want to take the tag on her head and saved her chastity by running away from her pack. How did she become a slave now? The night was long but passed as she slept while thinking about everything. The next morning, Delilah woke up and yawned. She looked beside her on the bed. The bed was empty. Where is he? She got down from the bed and did her morning routine. She wanted to take a shower and change her clothes. But she remembered how rude he was when he saw his clothes in her body. It was quite surprising that he had a lot of modern and expensive clothes, but he did not wear them at all. Those all were like brand new clothes as if they had never been used. She did not dare to touch them again. She went downstairs and saw there was no one. She made breakfast for two, though she knew he probably would not come back before the night. All of a sudden, she heard knocks on the main door. She thought it was Everett. So, she did not look in the window before opening the door. When the door opened, two boys were standing outside the door. She looked at them with a pair of confusing eyes. Both of them reacted equally but growled later. She came out of the house and stood outside. What do you want? They frowned at her. But she heard another voice behind them. Who are you? Another boy came from behind those two boys. She saw him throwing a wooden stake toward her. Her eyes widened. She was too shocked to move. The wooden stake came so fast to her and almost pierced her forehead, but a hand grabbed it in time. She turned her head to the man who just saved her. Everett, she whispered in fear. Everett looked at her. What are you doing outside? She came back to her senses and replied while pointing at the two boys. They knocked on the door. Who is she, Everett? One of the boys asked him. My slave. He replied while looking at her. She looked away from him. Cursing herself inside her head, why did she say that to him that night? Why? Delilah, you are such a foolish and shameless woman. She scolded herself. She felt embarrassed in front of the boys. Your slave? When did you decide to take a slave in your home? You didn't tell us about it. The boy who just attacked her said. She was begging for that. So, I thought why not? He smirked. Those boys glanced at Delilah, and she felt more embarrassed. I am going inside, she said to Everett and ran inside the house. She heard them talking when she was going inside. She is a daring woman, I must say. One of the boys said with an impressive tone. Delilah ignored their remarks and went inside. Everett took them inside and all of them sat on the couches. Delilah felt bad that she made breakfast only for two. She could not serve them breakfast. They looked like important people to Everett, so she thought to make some tea for them. Everyone except Everett kept glancing at her as they could see the kitchen openly. She felt nervous under their gazes. She took a tray, placed 4 cups of tea, and headed to them. She stood beside Everett and said, I made tea. He nodded at her without looking at her. She placed the cups in front of them on the tea table. I am Jack, what is your name, slave? One of the boys asked. The word slave jabbed her heart. But she replied while looking at the wooden floor. Delilah, nice name. He replied. I am Connor, and this is Luke. Another boy said and introduced the boy who attacked her. Luke nodded at her. For the attack. I thought you were an outsider. We didn't know Everett had a woman inside his house. Luke explained as he glanced at Everett. We are Everett's friends. Nice to meet you. The boy Connor said. Delilah smiled at them. They were not bad people. They talked with her politely. Where do you all live? She asked curiously. Norfolk Village, the next village after this forest. Oh, stop talking with them and go back to your room. Everett asserted with a cold tone. She nodded. Yes, Everett, his glare stopped her. Yes, master. She let out and hurriedly went upstairs. She waited in the room for more than 2 hours. She was hungry and had not eaten yet. She left her breakfast in the kitchen. He told her to go back to the room. Now how would she go downstairs? She was starving. She looked outside. The forest caught her eyes. She remembered what Connor said. Norfolk Village, she mumbled. When she heard the sound of the main door, she went downstairs and saw Everett coming from the door side after locking the door. He saw her and ignored her. She went to him. Standing in front of him, she asked him, Can I go to Norfolk Village to do a part-time job? Her life, can I go to Norfolk Village to do part-time work? Looking at his face she could see he was outrageous. In the way of my thinking, did I ask you anything? No, but I want to ask you if I can go. I don't care. He said with a harsh tone and headed to the couch. Should I take it as yes? She asked and turned to him. Why do you want to do any work? I feel bored alone and you also don't stay here all the day, so I thought I should earn some money too. He sneered. What do you think? You came here for vacation. She shook her head. Pardon me for this. He stared at her as she turned around and went to the kitchen. She came with 2 plates. She put them on the table. Everett looked at those plates. It's breakfast time. I know it's late. But I was waiting for your friends to go out. Actually, I only made breakfast only for the 2 of us. That's why. He looked irritated. How many times do I have to? She did not let him finish his sentence. Please, let's just eat quietly. I am really hungry. He was stunned. For the first time, someone interrupted him in the middle of his talk. He stared at her. She was a beautiful girl. Her soft and long hair, her clear skin, the way she licked her pink lips when she ate, everything caught his eye. When she looked at him, he averted his gaze from her. He took his plate and started to eat. She smiled when she saw him eating. Unknown happiness came to her heart. She had never eaten so peacefully before. All the time her step-parents taunted her and always gave her their leftovers to eat. It had been just 5 days since she was there. 3 days of blackout and 2 days of her consciousness. She felt she was at home. Here she could make food and eat her own. Still, she wanted him to eat with her. She never sat and ate together with someone after her father's death. Looking at her sudden sad face, he asked, "What happened?" She realized he could read her face. She replied, "I have never eaten anything together after my father's death." As if it was an interesting matter, he raised a question, "You don't have a father?" She shook her head while looking at him. "I don't have a mother either. My father died when I was 15 and my mother died when I was only 10. She told him sadly. He stared at her and she did not look away from him. "So where were you living before coming here?" he asked her. A sudden good feeling tugged at her heart. Is he interested in knowing about my life? She thought. Actually, my father married another woman after my mother died. She is not a good woman. She always toured me and forced me to do every work. But she warned me not to speak about that to my father. I was so afraid of her that I had never tried to tell my father about her pain." He looked away and nodded. He looked at his plate and she continued to speak, "When my father died, I was 15, so it was very important for me to study since I was growing up. But she stopped my study and forced me to stay at home. It was my good luck that my father was a pack fighter, so the Alpha knew him and asked about me to my stepmother. When Alpha learned that she did not have money for my study, he gave her money to continue my study. However, she put me in a school where teachers were not careful about students at all. My stepmother grabbed all the money and let me study at that school. I started to try my best to study hard. Because I knew her intentions. In fact, she grabbed my father's house and the money he left for me too. She married another man and he also started to stay at my home. They treat me like a maid. I wanted to complain about it to the Alpha. But he only scolded my stepmother and she apologized to him by saying she would be careful about me. Day by day, people started to call me by different names. I cried to her to stop talking badly about me to others. But she didn't listen to me. Lastly, she wanted to do something really disgusting, so I had to run away from home. He looked at her. What did she do? Delilah smiled sadly as she looked down. She was too embarrassed to say those things. But he was her master since she agreed to become his slave, so he had a right to know everything about her. She tried to sell me to a few men for a night. She said. She paused and took a deep breath. She said I have to behave well with them so that they could recommend me to others. She glanced at him. He was staring at her with an indifferent face. She looked away again and waited for him to say something. Why didn't you run away before? He asked with a calm tone. I did not have anywhere to go and that house was full of my mother's memories. I tried to run once, but she always blackmailed me by saying that she would throw me to the beast in the forest. He stared at her without asking anything. She thought he would get annoyed hearing about the beast. She didn't know why she always ended up talking about the beast. Maybe you don't like him. But he is very dangerous, she said. Really? Delilah nodded her head as her eyes fell on his dark eyes. She slightly came closer as if the beast would listen to her, then whispered, "People say that he eats people alive. Every person from my pack who went to the forest never came back. He killed them." Everett stared at her frightened face and muttered, "I see." She looked around and said, "I think he is following me." Then she heard his raspy voice close to her ear, "Why do you think he is so interested in you that he is following you? The necklace, why do you think he is so interested in you that he is following you?" She gasped and moved back. Looking at his eyes, she could see something strange but could not tell what was that. Interested? Didn't you just say he is following you? What do you think you are? Someone special? She understood that he was making fun of her. She felt somehow insulted. "I have never said that. I saw him, so I am telling you this." Everett nodded as if he assumed that she was lying to him. "How much did you see him?" Delilah remembered that night. She remembered the way that hurricane lamp lost the flames just before she could see him. But those fierce orange eyes! The anger in his eyes made her shiver in her spine. As if he would kill her any time soon. As if he would eat her alive, just like others said. She closed her eyes and rested her head on the headrest of the couch. "I can't explain to you what I saw, Master. I saw his angry eyes. The way he was looking at me, I can't describe to you. I feel like he is watching me every time. As if he is here and watching me. I am feeling his dark gaze on me without having him here." She sighed and waited for him. He was silent, so she opened her eyes and saw him staring at her. There was an amazement in his eyes. "You should go to him. Why are you here?" She sat up. "No, please. Don't say that. I just hate him." He frowned. "Hate? Yeah, no one can like him. Who would like a beast?" The amazement in his eyes vanished as he nodded. "You are right." Then he stood up and left the house without saying anything to her. Delilah stared at the door. Why does he always leave the house? She was scared of living in the middle of the forest all alone. Nevertheless, she had no option either. Delilah locked the door and stayed in the house all day. She cleaned the house to kill time. She was really bored. When it was late at night, Everett did not come back home. Delilah was afraid that something happened to Everett. She did not go to the bedroom and rested on the couch. She waited for him for the whole night. When it was the morning, she heard knocks. She woke up and realized she fell asleep on the couch. She rushed to the door. She opened the door after looking out the window. "Are you okay?" she asked Everett the moment she opened the door. He frowned. His mood did not look well to her. He ignored her and entered the house. "Did I make him angry again? What did I do this time?" she asked herself and scratched her head. She saw a bag in his hand. He put the bag on the couch and said, "Wear this." She was stunned. Did he buy a cloth for her? She took the bag and took out a long simple gown. It was a dress that villagers wear normally. Did he go to the village to buy clothes for her? Her heart skipped a beat when she thought about that. She looked at him. "Thank you, Master." He nodded and said without looking at her, "You can go to the Norfolk village, but with a few conditions." Delilah was shocked. He was letting her go to the village side. "Yes. Don't talk about the forest. Don't tell them where you live, and don't talk about me. I have nothing to do with them, so you won't tell them about my house. One slave is enough, I don't want another." She nodded her head. I know he is handsome, but what is he thinking of himself? Who would come here leaving the village to stay with him? Only I did that. She thought. When he was going upstairs, she called him, Master. He stopped but did not turn to her. Master, how can I go there? I don't know the way. Connor will come later to take you there. Thanks, Master. He went upstairs without replying. He went to sleep. She entered the room and saw him sleeping. She was also sleepy. She did not sleep well last night, she only slept for 2 or 3 hours. So she also lay on the bed and tried to sleep again. Without her knowing, she felt relaxed when she came back to the bed. She did not know whether it was because she was on the soft mattress or the man was back home. She glanced beside her. Maybe I have never stayed with another man like this before, that is why I am feeling like this. She thought. The wind blew in the room because the window was open. She was too tired to get up and close it. She felt cold under the quilt, so she slightly moved toward the man in the bed. When their bodies were a little bit distant, she felt warmth. His body was very warm, giving his heat to her. She smiled and slept while trying not to touch his body anyhow. When she woke up it was noon. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. The man was not there and the bed was empty as usual whenever she woke up. How can he sleep so little? She went to the bathroom to take a shower. But she felt something on her neck. She put off her clothes and stood in front of the long mirror in the bathroom. She was shocked. She was wearing a necklace with 4 leaves on her neck. She touched the necklace and caressed it. When did she wear it? She could not remember anything related to it. How did it come on her neck? It was not there yesterday. She looked at the beautiful silver necklace. Only one thing came to her mind. Did he make me wear this necklace when I was asleep? An introvert Delilah wore the dress Everett bought for her. It was a coffee color gown with a very simple design. In that cloth, she looked like an average-looking girl. She saw a comb and a few hair bands. Did he buy those for me too? Whoa! She was happy. She looked at herself and tied her hair in a high ponytail. She looked like a teenage girl. She went downstairs and saw Everett with Connor. You were at home? She asked Everett. As usual, he avoided her questions. Connor smiled at her and she smiled back. She went to the kitchen to prepare lunch since Everett was at home and his friend was there too. This time she prepared a meal for 3 people. She called them to the table. Connor's eyes glittered. Wow, nice aroma. Please come and take a seat. Let's have lunch together. Everett glared at her and she ignored his gaze. Did I say something wrong? She thought. 3 of them sat at the table and began to have their lunch. Girl, you have magic in your hands. Connor said. Delilah looked at him confusedly. I mean, your cooking is amazing. Thanks, Connor. She felt Everett's gaze on her. She kept eating without looking at him. After finishing lunch and washing dishes, she said, I am done. Connor replied, then let's go. Delilah nodded and walked with him but stopped when she saw Everett did not come to see them off. She said to Connor, I am coming outside in a minute. Connor nodded at her and went out of the house. Delilah made her way to Everett and smiled at him, I am going to get a job. This will be the first job in my life. Wish me luck. He stared at her indifferently. I don't believe in these types of things. But I do. So master, can you wish me? She asked him cutely. Just go. Don't annoy me. He said and turned around to go upstairs. She sighed. I am going, Master, she said and went outside not before closing the door of the house. My friend is really arrogant. But you are too innocent for him. Connor said. What do you mean? Nothing, let's go. I have to take you back before the dawn. Why? She asked. Connor came close to her and said with a shaking tone, otherwise the beast will hunt you. She gasped. Looking at her face he laughed out loud. I am sorry but look at your face. Delilah got mad at him. You are making fun of me. I am sorry, just kidding. Let's go. They walked for 30 minutes and saw a populated side. A bright smile came to her mind. But her smile paused. I didn't ask him about the necklace. She mumbled. Connor heard her. This necklace is very special. Really? Yeah, this necklace will stop your scent from increasing and it will help you to hide your rank here. Why? You cannot stay here longer as an Omega. Only your working place can know about it if you tell them. Because you have a unique scent and it would affect the mated and unmated, both wolves. Delilah felt embarrassed about her scent. Because of it, she had to bear so many things. Connor took her to a hospital. You can work here as a nurse. This village is a very healthy village. Yet, some people always get injured. So being a nurse is a good profession. You can help others and treat them with the support of doctors. Delilah thought it was indeed a good work that she could help others. When Delilah entered the hospital, everyone looked at Connor. Sometimes they glanced at her. Is everything okay? He asked one of the doctors. They bowed to him and nodded. Delilah frowned at why they were bowing to Connor. Let's go to the head office room to get permission from the head doctor, Connor said. Delilah was nervous about herself because she did not know what the head doctor would ask her, she had no experience at all. She nodded and they entered the empty office room. Where is the head doctor? She asked. Connor then went to the head empty chair and sat down there. What? You are the head doctor? Connor smiled at her. Yes, dear. Delilah blushed. I thought you were a worker. Yeah. Connor shook his head and gestured to her to sit on a chair opposite him. Delilah sat down. So, tell me. Do you have any experience in medicine? No. She replied and lowered her head. Connor saw her hesitant so he said, Don't worry, I'm just asking in curiosity. You can work here. Your master ordered me to give you this job. Master ordered him. What does that mean? She thought. She shoved all the thoughts and nodded at him. Connor called one of his doctors and she came to his office. Lily, this is Delilah. She will work under you as a nurse. Train her well, she is very new in this medical section. Lily frowned at Delilah but nodded at Connor. Yes, sir. Lily gestured to Delilah to come outside with her. Delilah thanked Connor and left the office with Lily. Hello. She tried to start a conversation. Miss Winters. Pardon. Call me Miss Winters. Oh yes, Miss Winters. They entered the cabin. There were a few boards and books. Nursing clothes were also there. Delilah went to the restroom to change her clothes into a nursing uniform. She happily folded the clothes that Everett bought for her. Lily told her to recite some names of a few tonics and potions that they collected for their patients. Then she taught her how to set up 4 drops and injected others. Though it would take time for Delilah to learn everything, she believed she would learn soon. After 2 hours, she was on a break. So she roamed around the hospital. It was not a very big hospital but it was bigger than her pack hospital. She sat on a bench out of the hospital. She was enjoying the weather as she thought about her life. She was feeling alive here, where no one knew her, no one was disgracing her, no one wanted to sell her body, nor did anyone attracted to her scent. It was like a dream life for her. Delilah's eyes fell on a child and her mother. She missed her mother a lot. Delilah walked to the child and smiled at her. "How old is she?" she asked the child's mother. The mother's eyes fell on Delilah's uniform. She understood that Delilah was a nurse in the hospital, so she smiled at Delilah. "She is 8 years old." "Nice. What is your name?" Delilah asked the child. "She is Amelia." Her mother replied on behalf of her daughter, and the little girl hid behind her mother. "Is she an introvert?" Delilah asked and chuckled. "No, she is not. She is not talking with anyone." Suddenly, Delilah frowned. "Why? What did the doctor say about this matter? Did you tell them?" The mother nodded sadly. "Yeah, but they said it is normal when she is in shock. She will be fine slowly." "Shock?" The mother looked around and came close to Delilah. "We live close to the forest side. So she usually plays with her pals outside of our house in the evening. But one night I was sleeping and her father was not at home. I heard her scream. I found her on our terrace. I saw her pointing her finger at the forest. After that, she is not talking with anyone. She always looks afraid, as if she saw something." Delilah saw the child and she lowered her eyes to the ground. She bent down on her knees and stroked her pretty hair. "Little girl, don't worry. You are an angel, you can fight the devil. You are more powerful than what you have seen. Don't be afraid of it, okay?" Amelia looked at Delilah as if she was surprised to hear her remarks, but immediately hid behind her mother again. Delilah smiled and stood up. "By the way, what did she see? She is too young. Maybe she is just afraid of the dark." The mother shook her head. "The villagers think she seems to have seen the beast." Talking with Connor, the villagers think she seems to have seen the beast. What? That was Delilah's reaction. A shocking reaction. She looked at the girl. "She saw the beast?" she asked in a whisper. The mother sighed and nodded. She almost cried. "My daughter is alive. So all I thank to the moon goddess. I don't want anything else." Delilah patted her shoulder. "Didn't I tell Everett about the beast? He always ignores it. That man. He should have come with me. Then he would believe me," she thought. "Don't worry, she will be fine." The woman nodded. "What is your rank?" she asked. Delilah hesitantly replied, "Omega." "Oh. You." "I am Theta female. My daughter is Beta. She got the rank from her father. He is a Beta actually." Delilah got that. In this village, rank mattered a lot. She could see the pride of her rank in the woman's eyes. "Where do you live?" the woman asked her. "I am living in the middle of the FO." Delilah immediately paused. She remembered Everett's warning. How could she be so careless? "In the middle of where?" the woman asked. Delilah chuckled awkwardly. "In the middle of this village. My home is very far from here." Amelia tugged her mother's dress, so her mother apologized to Delilah for leaving. "I am sorry, I have to leave now. I think Amelia wants to go back now. She is on medication, she needs sleep." "Yeah, sure," Delilah replied. The woman held her daughter's hand and started to go. The girl Amelia turned to Delilah. Delilah waved at her, but she did not wave back but only looked at her until her mother took her to the other side and told her about something. Why was she looking at me like that? Strange girl. Delilah thought and went back to the hospital. After working another 2 hours, she waited for Connor to finish his work. Because it was already evening and he would take her back to her home. Home? Can I call it my home? That is his home. I just met him. But I always felt safe whenever he was with me. Is that because he saved me? She looked down at her dress and caressed it. He is arrogant but a good person. Delilah saw many family members and friends come for patients in the hospital. They were living in a society together. She thought it would not be bad if she stayed in a populated place like this. She remembered the night when she ran to Everett. If she knew about this place, she would have not disturbed him and come here directly. But she didn't know the way at that time. Let's go. Connor came and Delilah stood up from her seat. She was sitting in the reception area. When another nurse and doctor saw Connor with her together, they thought Delilah was a special someone, so that their head was taking her with him. In the area where no one was living or going there, they went back to the forest from the village with that way. Connor yet? How was your first day? He asked as he walked in front of her. Good, but there is a question in my mind. You can ask. I met a patient and her mother. Just in a day, you started to meet up with the patient's family? Not bad. No, it's not like that. I met her in the park side, outside of the hospital. Okay. Then. She is 8 years old. She can't talk right now. I heard she saw the beast. Connor's steps paused. Delilah looked at him to hear his thoughts about it. He turned his head to her said and asked with an angry tone, Who told you this? Her mother. Delilah felt awkward about his reaction. She walked to him and looked at him. Are you okay? Why are you angry? He sighed and shook his head. No, I am not. What do you think about it? Look, Delilah. Isn't it better not to talk about this matter? We only treat people and wolves. It is not in our hands about what others saw. And she is just a child. She had a panic attack and was temporarily mute. She will be okay soon. But what about she saw? You are too curious about everything. Don't you think curiosity killed the cat? He said. His eyes were like a predator. For once she felt like she was talking about him, so that he was getting angry at her. Come on. Why do you both react like the beast? Don't talk about it in front of others. No one will like it. If you hear something about the beast, try to avoid it as much as you can. Otherwise. She frowned. Otherwise what? Otherwise who knows what he planned? Maybe he will fix his eyes on you and hunt you lastly. Connor said with a deep voice. She said and slightly hit his arm. Stop scaring me. He broke into laughter and shook his head. The moon was glowing. They could see each other through the moonlight and headed to the wooden house. Delilah felt that Connor was a friendly guy. I will set your schedule from tomorrow so you can go back earlier before the afternoon. Thanks, Connor. Mention not. They talked about a few matters of nursing. Connor told a joke about how some new nurses fainted when they saw doctors do any operation. Delilah laughed hard because Connor was acting like those nurses and imitating their expressions. Connor was a really fun guy. How could he become the head doctor at such a young age? If she did not see it today, she would never have believed that. They kept laughing and talking when they reached the wooden house. We are at home. Connor said. Delilah smiled at him, but her smile froze when her eyes fell on the man leaning against a tree. Everett was standing while glaring at her. She became nervous. For a few hours, she thought she was a free spirit. But now his glare reminded her she was not, she was someone's slave. Looks like you're out for a walk, not work. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.